and welcome to the Football Nerd, not FIFA, just football. In this video I'll be analysing last season's results and scores. Hopefully this should help you predict and bet on next season's scores and results. I hope this is helpful. This is my analysis.
So this is how I define each result as either a shock or not. This is the key for the cross-sectional graph of all the results from last season's Premier League season, which I'll show you in a moment. So results that highlighted green are not shocks. Highlighted yellow, it means a lower team loses to a team finishing under 10 places above them. So say Stoke losing to a mid-table team, say West Ham or Crystal Palace. Orange, that means a low team draws to a team finishing at least 10 places above them. So I classify that as a shock. Light red is a minor shock as well, when a high team loses to a team finishing under 10 places below them. And a major shock is highlighted red. When the scoreline is highlighted red, that means higher teams lost to a team finishing at least 10 places below them. So that's the major shock. I'll be using this analysis to make a good conclusion over whether the Premier League really is a competitive league. So that's the key I'm going to be using. This is the 2014-15 table of results then. There were 760 Premier League games last season as ever. 71 of those were minor shock wins, which constituted 9.3% of all results. There were 11 major shock wins, which is nowhere near as many. That was just 1.4% of all results. So altogether, 1 in 10 games finished as shock wins last season, which isn't a lot, but I think 1 in 10 is just enough for them to be called shock wins. So West Brom and Stoke had the joint most shock wins last season with 7. 5 of Stoke's came at home and 2 away, obviously. Stoke obviously very good at home, so not too surprising that they got 5 shock wins at the Britannia against sides like Arsenal and Liverpool. West Brom had more of a mixed shock results sort of spread, with 4 at home and 3 away. West Brom surprised a few teams towards the end of last season, like Man United and Chelsea. Sunderland had the highest amount of shock away wins with 6. Villa was second with 5, which might surprise you. And the bottom 3 had many shock results last season. The bottom 3 constituted for 22.5 of all shock results. QPR got 10 at home, which is the most of any side at home. Burnley surprised a few sides last season as well, with 10 shock home results and 12 shock results in total, and Hull as well with 10 shock results in total. Did okay. So 22.5% is quite a big percentage when you consider that the bottom 3 only make up 15% of the league. So the bottom 3 from last season didn't do too badly, picked up some good results at home. It might be a good shout to back the 3 promoted sides if you fancy them. And that's because promoted sides usually do okay in the Premier League. Only 1 or 2 end up going down. and the same might apply next season. And if you think about in terms of the previous season when they were promoted, they would have had to win most of those games in order to reach the Premier League. So it's always good to back the promoted sides from the Championship. And onto shock draws. There were 28 shock draws, which made up 3.6% of all results. 14.3% of games were shock results, which means 14.3% of all games last season were shock results, either shock wins or shock draws, which also means 86.7% were not shock results. So, obviously with shock results, they're not going to be likely, but you've got to be clever with the way you analyse results. This is what I'm helping you with now. So the teams to go for in terms of draws would be, considering last season's results, Everton, who had 7 draws at home and 11 draws in total. So backing Everton to draw at home in their first few games of the season would be a good shout. When they play sides like Spurs and Man City, they could get draws in those. Everton are a strange side because they can draw against the likes of United and City, but they can also draw against pretty much any side below them. Sunderland actually had the most draws in total last season with 20. They amassed 38 points, which kept them in the division by the skin of their teeth, which is actually a point a game. So Sunderland usually get a point from every Premier League game on average. So they could do the same again next season with a lot of draws. And the most away draws last season were from West Ham with 7 away draws, which is equal to Burnley and Sunderland. West Ham tend to draw with teams around them, and West Ham only had 1 shock defeat as well, it's worth noting, last season, the least of any mid-table club. So West Ham don't produce many shock wins, and they don't suffer many shock defeats either. All 7 of West Ham's away draws last season were against teams around them, and their only shock defeat was on the last day of the season against Newcastle, of course. So, it remains to be seen whether these mediocre results continue under the reign of Slaven Bilic. Chelsea are another team who tend not to slip up against teams below them. Of course, winning the league last season with only 3 losses in total and none at home. They went a whole season unbeaten at home. You're best off probably going for Chelsea to draw. They only had 4 shock draws last season compared to 3 shock losses. So you're best off going for, say, the likes of West Ham to draw against them. I also wouldn't bet against Chelsea next season at Stamford Bridge, with their only draw at home last season coming against Burnley in that 1-1 draw. The opposite can be said of Man U, who lost more than they drew last season. They suffered 12 shock results, which was the most of any side in the top 6. Whether that continues next season again remains to be seen with United's new signings. So you're best off betting for United to lose than United to draw. They obviously self-destructed at Leicester early on in the season, and lost 6 more games against teams below them. Their 12 shock results suffered last season was the most of any side in the top 6. So you're best off backing sides to beat United rather than to draw against them. So the stadiums where the most shock wins were at last season were Selhurst Park with 10 shock wins. Not all of them from Palace, but also from sides below Palace. And second in that list is the Britannia Stadium. Again, Stoke can beat sides above them. They can also lose against sides below them, as they did last season. Both sides mixed results. Stoke and Palace resulted in their mid-table finishes last season. As you can see, Swansea and Southampton were 2 of the standout teams at home last season, both losing just 4 games at home. So they'll be the side to back again at home next season. In terms of scorelines, there are a few good Premier League predictor games where you can predict the results. Another fun predictor game is one you can play with your mates, where it's 1 point for a correct result and 3 points for a correct scoreline. If you're going for a draw, I'd recommend going for a 1-1 draw. There were 33 1-1 draws last season, and only 30 0-0s and only 22 2-2s. So 1-1 is the most popular scoreline from last season in terms of draws. Wins then, and there were 77 1-0 wins. 1-0 win was by far the most popular scoreline in terms of wins. Second was 2-1. It was 56 2-1s last season and 54 2-0s, and 3-1 with 29 and 3-0 with 26 scorelines trail far behind.
I've tried to keep this video quite short so you don't get bored to tears by numbers. Hopefully you've been blown away by some of the stats that I've mentioned. So it's now time to answer the question of whether the Premier League really is a very competitive league or not. And there was one stat about 22.5% of all shock results being from the relegated teams, but if you think about that, there's a lot of room for the relegated clubs to pick up shock results in terms of places above them. Also, not a lot of those results were major shock results. I think only 4 major shock results out of all of those. So, you know, I think that the Premier League is a competitive league, don't get me wrong, but I think it's only competitive for certain parts of the league. I think the bottom half of the league can all compete with each other, and the top half of the league can all compete with each other. But other than that, I think there is a big gap between bottom half and the top half, whereas in other foreign leagues you see a lot more of the smaller clubs, if you like, beating and picking up points against the bigger clubs. So there we have it then. I've been the football nerd, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. I would analyse foreign leagues as well, just to prove my point, but well, even the football nerd doesn't fancy that one. So comment if you think the Premier League is the most competitive league in the world. And thanks for watching, and I'll be back with more football videos. Adios.